Hey, today we're talking about a ghost story.
Ooh.
Yeah, spooky. And this was actually an email that came into the TV list. And in the email, toward the end, the person wrote, all I will say to you is, if ever you were to witness a ghost, your science would go straight out the window. You wouldn't assume it was your mind or eyes playing tricks on you. You would humble yourself to admit that just because science can't comment on the issue, you can't deny what you saw. And that's all in caps, and you wouldn't be hosting the show that you do.
First of all, you can be an atheist and not believe in ghosts. I mean, and believe in ghosts.
Right.
I mean, we just don't believe in God. I don't believe in ghosts. You don't believe in ghosts.
Right.
But that doesn't mean that would make there be a God out there.
Correct.
It just means there would be some paranormal stuff that we didn't know about before.
Correct. And I linked her to a study called Cognitive Behavioral Therapy of Psychosis, an Overview, and 3 case studies. And I quoted from that study.
That sounds way more technical than that person is prepared to read.
Well, let me tell you why I did that. Specifically, I did that because one of the things she wrote also in her email was to ask Matt something I'm intrigued by, Mr. Dillahunty, just what qualifications do you hold? So since this is a person who is impressed by qualifications, I went ahead and found a research study for her. Right. And I put this is a quote from the study. As a behavioral experiment, and this is when it says she, when it refers to she in this paragraph, it's talking about a psychotic patient. Mm-hmm. As a behavioral experiment, she was also asked to record the voices she heard, and these are voices in her head, with a tape recorder. She recorded nothing and started to realize that the voices she heard did not really exist. And then in parentheses it says, collaborative empiricism with emphasis on examination of objective evidence. And what I wrote was, in terms anyone can understand, she was able to compare what she heard to a more objective measure and recognize that her perceptions did not align with what is commonly regarded as reality. I do not mean to mock the mentally ill, but when a confirmed nutcase can recognize that if what I hear and see is not measurable by devices known to record what is heard and seen, the experience is most likely all in my head, I wouldn't dare to presume that sane individuals, and I think Matt is more sane than a diagnosed psychotic no matter how strongly you disagree with his ideology, would be incapable of the same level of reasoning capacity.
You know, when they actually try to record ghost voices, you get things like, I don't know if you've ever seen, I guess it's the TV show Ghost Hunters.
Yeah, it's very funny.
But they record background static in the room and then they speed it up or slow it down until they hear things that sound like syllables.
Right.
And then they make up what they think it sounds like and then they play it with subtitles. So it'll be like...
And we're going to talk a little bit about bias in research if we get to it. So when the person wrote back to me, she wrote back and she gave me some more information about her experience with ghosts. Apparently she had a ghost experience. And she says, when I was, at a guess, 7 or 8 years old, I saw a ghost in the home of my parents' friend's house. Well, my first note there is that we're dealing with a 7 or 8-year-old. She says, I was with my other little friend who also saw it at the same time. Okay, so she's in a strange house, and there are 2 little children who see this.
I'm the ghost with the most, baby.
But I do remember very vividly us both running down those stairs as fast as our legs would carry us. So number 4, the thing that stands out to me is frightened. They were frightened by whatever they saw, and being frightened affects your perception. She says, I'm now 38 years old, which to me demonstrates that this happened approximately 30 years ago, so we're not even working on a fresh experience. We're working from a 30-year-old memory of a 7 or 8-year-old that happened when she was in a strange house with a little friend. These are the problems that I'm seeing with the story already. So then she says, to this day, I cannot sleep with the light off. And that I noted because she's still scared as an adult and she's working from memory. So wouldn't it be far more sensible to just humbly say, we don't know what it was, we can't have all the answers, but we can't deny it was there just because science can't explain it?
My answer to that is yes.
Right, and I agree with her. I'm perfectly happy saying we don't know what you saw, and that's perfectly reasonable to say. We don't know what you saw.
Right. I think it's important to note that you don't go after a story like this assuming that the person is just lying or deluded. I mean,
Right.
you listen to the story and you evaluate the evidence and think
Right.
about whether it's more likely that this unprecedented, well-documented case of a supernatural thing occurring has actually happened, or whether it's more likely that some mistakes have crept into the story.
Right. So you have to look at things based on, what do we have to evaluate? And so when I replied, I said anecdotal evidence is not evidence of anything. I have no idea what you and your friends saw, and yet you call it a ghost. So my first point here is we don't know, so why is she calling it a ghost? If we agree that you don't know what you saw, you said you don't know what you saw. You told me that I shouldn't assert what you saw, that I know what you saw, and yet you're asserting you know what you saw. That contradicts the claim that we should say we don't know what you saw. I'm willing to say you don't know what you saw. You're telling me it's a ghost.
People usually approach this story like asserting very quickly that we're arrogant for not believing.
I find a huge amount of what I'm going to call projection, and I know it's frustrating when somebody plays armchair psychologist and somebody tries to tell you what you're thinking or what's going on in your head. Nobody likes that to happen. But I've seen too many discussions where there's not just theists, but somebody that believes in something that may be a little over the top, and they come at it from the standpoint of you think you know everything.
Right.
And in reality, I'm saying I'm not making any assumptions about this thing. What I'm saying is, why are you making assumptions about this thing? But even if it was a direct claim, that particular division, the Lord, Liar, Lunatic, it's important to note that lunatic encompasses everything from an absolute nut job to somebody who's honestly mistaken.
Yeah.
So in other words, if I thought I saw something but I really didn't, it's like I saw something like that but it wasn't exactly what I saw, that would qualify in that argument as lunatic.
Somebody who is, for example, a 38-year-old remembering the experience she had as a 7-year-old while she was terrified and superstitious.
Right.
That little girl is not a lunatic. 38-year-old, maybe arguable. But
what I responded to her with was to tell her that anecdotal evidence is not evidence of anything. I have no idea what you or your friends saw, and yet you call it a ghost. And I asked her how she knows what she saw was a ghost. And I said, during the Salem witch trials, children were a large part of those proceedings. Children have active imaginations. They're especially prone to fear. Since they are, for the most part, dependent people who are incapable of taking care of themselves. Fear for a child is extremely magnified because they don't have the type of independence that an adult would have. They don't have that sort of feeling of being able to protect themselves. They feel like adults have to protect me. So for a child to be
kids,
afraid...
everything seems magic because a lot of stuff is out of their control anyway.
Right.
It's like Arthur C. Clarke said, any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic.
Right.
And to a kid, everything is so weird and strange and they don't have any explanations at this point.
Well, yeah.
That an explanation of magic pixies coming in is just as plausible as saying, oh, actually, some...
Well, I mean, you walk up to a little kid and you do the thumb thing, right? And it's like there's children at a certain age are going to be amazed by that. They think, oh my gosh, you can pull your thumb off. I mean, yes, children aren't the best judge of what they're seeing.
Yeah.
And the reality behind what they've witnessed. It's like, yeah, you did see Uncle Jed pull his thumb off, but it's just a trick. I mean, it wasn't what it appeared to be. That's a great example, in fact, of how a child can see something and say, that's what I saw. I saw him take his thumb off. Well, yeah, you did see him take his thumb off, and you saw me steal your nose yesterday, but, it's just not really what happened.
Well, yeah, but then they get to a certain age, and the age varies depending on how much of a grounding they have in skepticism, and you say, hey, look, I pulled my thumb off, and they go, no, you didn't.
Right. At that point, they start to realize that this thing conflicts with reality, and so therefore there's got to be a trick. There's got to be a mistake, an error, a trick. There's something going on here besides what I'm seeing that is
and they
that is
reach
the explanation.
level 1 skepticism.
Right.